brief opening remark. One of the things we've talked about this session is our focus on COVID recovery and economic recovery. And we're trying to make that the focus for this session, and it certainly has been so far. And really pleased that we were able to move out the unemployment insurance bill, Senate Bill 5061, from the Senate last week, and then the House quickly passed it as well, and we've sent that to the governor. That's going to provide needed relief to families and to small businesses that have been hit so hard by this pandemic. We also have the economic recovery budgets, the early action COVID budgets, moving quickly with hearings and action happening this week. So I'm glad that we have those moving so that we can help everyone in Washington State to get through this pandemic and to recover as quickly and as strongly as we can. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. And I'm House Majority Leader Pat Sullivan. I'm joined by our floor leader, Monica Stonier. We've been working hard in the House to do many of the things that Senator Billig already talked about, providing B&O tax relief so that no business had to pay taxes on relief money that they received from the federal government or from the state government for that matter. Last Friday, we pushed hard to get the UI bill out, get it over to the governor's desk so that businesses can see that relief right away. Tonight, we're planning on passing the Step 1 recovery bill. We're very excited about that $2.2 billion that will go out very quickly to help people who are struggling with rent, businesses that are struggling to stay open. That money is needed right now, and so we're pushing very hard to make sure that those dollars get out into our communities as soon as possible.
Thank you, and first we will go to Rachel LaCourte with the Associated Press. Rachel.
Hi, good afternoon. I wanted to ask about House Bill 1406, the so-called billionaire tax. There are a lot of Democratic co-sponsors, so I'm curious. I know the hearing's tomorrow. It hasn't been scheduled for a vote in committee yet, but what's the likelihood it'll see a floor vote in the House, and where does Senate leadership stand on that idea?
Well, the bill hasn't even been heard yet, so we'll take it one step at a time. I know Representative Frame spent an enormous amount of time during the interim looking into the wealth tax. It only affects billionaires in our state. It's very popular, I think, in our communities. But let's see how the hearing goes, and we'll take it from there.
Just on the Senate part of that question, just too early to say. We have not studied it in depth as a caucus, and we'll wait to see what happens with the House.
Rachel, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, you didn't really answer my question. I mean, especially Majority Leader Sullivan, you signed on to the bill, so in theory you support it. 26 members total are in support of this measure. So you talk about bills all the time before they've had a hearing. Do you think that it has a chance this year? Is there some sort of public sentiment that would support it this year over other years, or is this just a conversation starter bill?
Well, for sure, we are going to be talking about how we can make our tax code more fair. That is no question, and it's no surprise that there are a lot of Democrats who signed on to that bill. But we, as a caucus, haven't had a lot of discussion about the issue, and that's why I wasn't trying to be flippant about my response. I just think that from our caucus's perspective, there has to be a lot more conversation about this, how it fits in with the capital gains excise tax, as well as other ways that we can make the tax code more fair. Obviously, we've had a lot more conversation about capital gains over the last 5 or 6 years. It's been part of our budget proposal. So, where it fits in amongst all the other proposals is something that we need a lot more conversation about.
And I can add in a little bit just on what it would mean for the floor, Rachel, since that was part of your question as well. Much of the conversations around the finance tools that the committee is currently seeing, and Representative Noel Frame has worked pretty hard to help our caucus members and just kind of bring the conversation along on all of the tools. They just have not been discussed in the context of one another. So a lot of these individual tools and approaches have been up for discussion over the interim, and it's clear that this is one that is quite popular. But as the majority leader just said, in the context of the other tools that we're looking at and the budget scenario that we have, the floor, whether or not it comes up for a floor vote will determine how well it fits in with our overall scenario for the end budget discussion, and what is most popular and viable for a vote out of the House and Senate this year.
And yeah, just to follow up on that and to extend on that, you know, nobody's going to vote for taxes sake. It's about where the investment goes. So there's, anytime we consider a revenue bill, there's two pieces to it. What's the revenue piece? But also, what are we investing in? Because if you're investing in something like public health or in childcare, where we know there's some big return on investment, that makes a difference for what you might vote for on the revenue side. And so with every time we consider a revenue bill, it's always two pieces. And really a third piece is to try to make the tax code more fair. So it's what's the revenue, what are we going to invest it in, what's the return on that investment, and is it making our tax code more fair?
All right. Next, we will go to Austin Jenkins with the Northwest News Network. Austin.
Thank you. This is a question, I guess I'll start with, well, for both the leaders. And it has to do with the news release that went out, I think, Friday night from 3 Olympic Peninsula Democrats saying that they can no longer support the governor's reopening approach, and that they feel like the regional approach is unfairly penalizing counties in their legislative district that they feel like have been really compliant and have driven down the numbers, but still advance because of, on a regional basis, they don't qualify. What should we read into this? Is this just three rebels in your caucuses? Is this speak to a deeper dissatisfaction or level of concern among Democrats about the chosen path of the governor? What's going on here?
Well, look, I mean, I think there's a lot of frustration overall with the impacts of the pandemic. I think we're all frustrated in our professional lives and our personal lives. We want things to get back to normal. And, you know, when I think about, and you look at sort of what the governor has done in his leadership and what the sacrifices that we've all made in our state. And we've had really positive results. When you look at, you know, Washington to compare it to other states, and it's tragic that, you know, 4,300 people have died in our state and all the people that have been hospitalized. But if you compare us to other states, the leadership of the governor and the sacrifices of the people of Washington state, it's actually working. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't focus also on how to get the balance right in terms of reopening. And I think, you know, the governor heard the concerns and is monitoring the system closely. And that's why he actually lightened up the metrics and allowed it to be 3 or 4 metrics to move to phase 4 instead of 4 metrics. And so I think for people that are interested in more opening, that's a step forward. But look, reasonable people can disagree on the details. I know that in different regions there are different particular concerns. And I think that this is a discussion that's going to keep going forward. Hopefully the numbers keep decreasing, the COVID case numbers and the hospitalization numbers keep decreasing everywhere so that the whole state can move to phase 2. And we're going to keep working on it. We're going to keep trying to get people's lives back to normal and have a full, robust, and safe recovery.
Well, there is no playbook to help guide us through this. I mean, you know, we're looking at a virus that, I mean, now we're looking at the mutations from the original virus actually being a majority of the cases. As we go through this, I think if you were to talk to 98 members of the House and 49 members of the Senate, and we could all decide on how we should move through the virus and how we should reopen, you'd have a lot of different ideas. And so these legislators are 3 that have an opinion about how they think we should move forward. I think if you talk to our members in the 47th district, we might have a totally different idea of how we should move forward. But in general, the governor, as Senator Billig has pointed out, has done a good job of listening to legislators, listening to community leaders in how we move forward through this really difficult time.
Austin, do you have a follow-up?
No, I'm good for the moment. Thanks, Aaron.
Next, we will go to Sara Gentzler with McClatchy. Sara.
Thanks, Aaron. Today, the State Auditor's Office shared information about a security breach of a third-party vendor that may have exposed personal data of 1.6 million Washingtonians who applied for unemployment benefits. Has this already, or will this, spur any discussions in the legislature in terms of lawmaking that might be aimed at preventing something like that from happening again?
We just found out about the breach this morning. We were briefed actually this morning at 7:30 in the morning, and we're still getting more details. So, certainly as a legislature, we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that any lessons that are learned, we can implement a better way of moving forward. But, at this point, we just don't have all the information to really know exactly how much data was breached and how we move forward. But we'll be working with the auditor's office and how we address these concerns and move on from there. At this point, we're being told that it's the third-party vendor that was at fault in the breach. But again, we'll know more information as we move forward.
And just want to add that it's already illegal. I mean, this was a breach, a hack, and law enforcement is very much involved. So yes, if there are things that the legislature can do to help in the future, and things like Senator Carlisle's privacy bill and other measures, absolutely. But I don't want anybody to be confused that this was an illegal hack of private information.
Sara, do you have a follow-up?
I do not. Thanks.
All right. Next, we will go to Jeff Pohjola with Como Radio. Jeff?
Yes, thank you for taking the time. I guess my question has to do with some of the bills that are dealing with the zero emission goals that the state has. Obviously, we saw last week the bill dealing with Uber and Lyft pass out of committee. And then I know last year there was a push to ban the sale of gasoline and diesel-powered cars by 2030. I'm wondering where the caucus is on that this time around.
Those are House bills, I believe. But I mean, I do think what I can say from the Senate is that there's a strong desire to deliver on both addressing our climate and the carbon that is particularly emitted in our transportation sector, but also that we've experienced with the fires and the smoke, right, and all of the climate changes that we're seeing, and to make sure that we are investing, whether it's a price on carbon, but investing those in green transportation infrastructure as part of a recovery that really centers equity and making sure that we're investing in the future as part of how we're trying to get through this horrific time. So I know that there is, I can't say like where those are moving, but it is, I think, emblematic or like a sign, right, that we're looking at how do we transition to clean fueled economy, and that it's going to take a bunch of different types of policies of how we are going to be able to get there. And so I think also it's important to note that both you guys probably spoke to it last week, but that both Representative Fye and Senator Hobbs have